Hi there, and welcome to episode 6 of HockeyCards.se, the podcast. In this episode, we will make our playoff predictions for what teams will make the conference finals and who will ultimately be the Stanley Cup champions. We will look at some buy and sell tactics for the playoffs and the offseason, and we will check in on Bedard prices and pop counts of his base Young Guns card. Finally, we will look at some hobby news. If you're listening to this episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel to help us grow the content. Our YouTube channel also features pack opening videos and box walkthroughs. You can join the HockeyCards.se Facebook group for instant updates on what's happening in the HockeyCards.se universe, as well as chatting all things hockey cards with us and the other members. And if you haven't already, please check out our website, HockeyCards.se. It's filled with free tutorials, hobby news, and product news for hockey card collecting. You will also find YouTube resources, Instagram accounts, and a lot of useful links to more in-depth information at the site. Right, let's kick this episode off with some playoff predictions. So we're going to take a look at the playoff brackets in this year's Stanley Cup Championship and see if we can predict which teams make it to the conference finals and who will be this year's champion. Keep in mind that I'm the worst bettor ever, and I don't think I've ever won a bet in my life. So whatever you do with this information, don't use it as financial advice. In the top part of the Western Conference's bracket, we have Vegas facing Dallas and Winnipeg facing Colorado. Two very interesting matchups. Dallas has had a great season, and Vegas are the reigning champions. Colorado won the championship 2 years ago, and Winnipeg has arguably one of the absolute best goaltenders in the league this year, with Connor Bedards playing an outstanding game. He is leading the league in goals saved above average at 33.1, 11.1 more goals saved above average than the second best goalie in the league, which is Thatcher Demko at 20. Looking at how the teams did around the trade deadline, Vegas were major buyers, once again utilizing the opportunity to put players on long-time injured reserve to free up cap space and be able to add more players to their roster. Since there is no salary cap in the playoffs, if all of Vegas' injured players were to magically return, like they were last year, and I think the year before that, Vegas will have a squad of players with a total salary of around $100 million. That will by far be the most expensive roster of any team. And given their roster strength and the fact that they won the championship last year, I think that Vegas will emerge victorious in this top bracket and make it to the conference final. In the Western bottom bracket, we have Vancouver versus Nashville and Edmonton versus LA. So Oilers take on the Kings again, just like last year, and again, I think Oilers will win that battle. Vancouver has had a great season, and with not only a lot of key players playing well, but also Thatcher Demko in goal showing some great numbers, I think we will see the Canucks take on the Oilers for the second spot in the conference finals. There is no doubting the Oilers' offense. However, the defense and goaltending has been awful for several seasons. However, it has looked less disastrous during the last half of the season, and if they can keep up an okay-ish level of defense, their offensive firepower will propel them to the Western Conference Finals. So, the prediction is that we end up with Vegas versus Oilers in the West. In the East, on the top end of the bracket, we have Florida versus Tampa Bay and Boston versus Toronto. Florida were great in last year's playoffs, but suffered too many injuries on key players. They had a really good trade deadline this year too. Boston were amazing in last year's regular season, breaking record upon record, and then entered the playoffs with 2 injured goalies and got knocked out. They've lost a lot of high-end players since last season and had a modest trade deadline, but they have had a great season nonetheless, and have kept finding ways to win. They also have arguably the league's best goalie tandem in Swayman and Ullmark, with basically 2 starter goalies in the lineup. So I think we will see a rematch of Boston-Florida from last year, and it's going to be intense, given the intensity of the games last year. I'd give the edge to Florida, but 1 or 2 injuries can turn the tide here, and Bruins will be wanting to do a lot better than last year. I'll go with my heart here and say that Bruins win in 7 games and make it to the conference finals. In the bottom bracket, we have Rangers versus Washington, which should be a piece of cake for the Rangers, even though their first line have been struggling to produce 5 versus 5 points for at least the second half of the season. The second game is Carolina versus Islanders, where Carolina has the edge, having had a great trade deadline as well. The only thing Islanders has going for them is Patrick Roy being their coach, and of course Ilya Sorokin in goal, but I think we will see Rangers Carolina battle it out for the last spot in the conference finals, and I think Carolina will win that series. That means we have Bruins Carolina in the Eastern Conference Finals and Vegas Oilers in the Western Conference Finals. I think we will see Vegas Carolina in the final, and I think Vegas will win it again, with a roster boosted by the Stanley Cup winning experience of last year, and ultra boosted by their $100 million roster. No other team will have the depth and resilience to injuries like Vegas will. So if you're thinking about buying or selling any cards of more substantial value right now, I thought we'd look at some tips for the playoffs and the off-season. There are typically 2 times of the year with peak hobby interest for buying cards, especially for players who perform very well at the time or are deemed to have massive potential. Those times are the start of the season and the start of the playoffs. Interest is often high in the playoffs, especially in the first round when there's lots of games being played every day. Great performances by a player here can increase the value of the cards you're looking to sell or buy. So, for example, if Chicago had made the playoffs and Bedard would have scored a hat-trick in the first game of the first round, it's safe to assume that there would be increasing buyers' interest around his rookie cards and values would go up. So, if you're looking to sell and the player whose cards you're looking to sell is performing really well right now, then now is the time to move those cards. If you're looking to buy, however, now is probably one of the worst times to be buying cards, although we don't know exactly how the general dip in prices and demand in the hobby that we're experiencing right now will affect this year's playoffs. But if you're looking to buy, the best time for you is probably the off-season, July, August. During the off-season, with the draft behind us and a long time until the start of the next season, hobby interest generally dips and demand goes down as many buyers seem to take a break. During this time, prices generally go down and seem to rebound when interest peaks again at the start of the next season. So, to summarize, if you're looking to sell, the first round of the playoffs has generally been a good time, with prices going up for players who are hot in the hobby. And if you're looking to buy, prices have generally gone down in the off-season, and you may want to save your money for now and spend them in August instead. Time for our Bedard-mania segment, where we track the pop count and sales prices of Connor Bedards PSA 10 base Young Guns card. We did our first Bedard-mania tracker 4 weeks ago in episode 2, and then we had a PSA 10 base Young Guns pop count of 337 with a 51% gem rate. Our prediction that we're tracking against is that there will be at least 10,000 PSA 10 cards before Christmas. Today, 4 weeks since we started, the pop count is 1,662, which is up by 260 in the last week. That means that the increase is actually slowing down, as we saw an increase of 356 cards the week before. So it's still increasing, but at a lower pace. The gem rate is holding steady at 46%. When we look at prices, we see that we have our first recorded sale under $1,000 at $999. That means that when comparing lowest sales prices, the prices have dropped by about $200 in the last week, or 17%, with last week's lowest sale being $1,198. So the population has increased by about 18%, and prices have dropped by about 17% in the last week. We will continue to track the pop count and prices of Bedard's PSA 10 base Young Guns cards in future episodes. Let's see if we hit 10,000 before Christmas. But now let's move on to some hobby news. Auston Matthews ultimately managed to get 69 goals in the regular season, stopping just 1 goal short of making him the 9th player in NHL history to score 70 goals. Matthews had 12 shots on goals in his final game, including one that hit the post. Matthews wins the Maurice Rocket Richard Trophy as NHL's goal-scoring leader, 12 goals ahead of Sam Reinhart in Florida on 57. Zach Hyman, 54, and Nathan MacKinnon, 51, also scored 50 goals or more this season. Tampa Bay's Nikita Kucherov won the Art Ross Trophy as NHL's overall scoring champion with 144 points, 44 goals and 100 assists. It's Kucherov's second time winning the Art Ross Trophy. Connor McDavid was the only other player to record 100 assists this year, ending his season on 132 points. Nathan MacKinnon finished second in the points race with 140 points, 51 goals and 89 assists. Connor Hellebuyck won his first William M. Jennings Trophy with the fewest goals allowed in the league. Hellebuyck had a whopping 60 starts this season. 5 players finished the season with an average time on ice of more than 25 minutes. In first place, we have John Carlson, Washington, followed by Drew Doughty of the Kings, Michael Matheson of Montreal, Seth Jones, Chicago, and Rasmus Dahlin of the Sabres. The most penalized player of last season was Arizona's Liam O'Brien with 153 penalty minutes, followed by Brady Tkachuk with 134 and Tom Wilson with 133. That's it for episode 6. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you again in episode 7.